Hey, all, this is Ron K. Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire, today with another broadcast for you. And this one, I want to talk a little bit about building your film career empire. And this basically applies to if you're an actor, if you're a filmmaker, if you're any type of artist trying to break into Hollywood. I think this information is going to be very useful to you. When I was first starting out, as a filmmaker, I actually started as an actor first and transitioned to being a filmmaker. You know, I was just very much ignorant as to how things worked. I was starry-eyed. I was looking and saying, wow, I'm going to make a big splash in Hollywood. I'm going to be doing all these projects. I'm going to be doing this, because I generally felt that I had talent, and I did have talent. But when you start spending a number of years in the industry, you quickly learn that it's just not about talent. And a lot of people are, you know, I read my comments threads and people are saying, oh, you're so negative. You seem like there's nothing you can do to break into the industry. And that's really not my intention on being negative. But what it is to paint a proper perspective so you can plan and strategize on how to break in. Because I think a lot of us go into the industry very naive and we don't understand how Hollywood works. I believe this. I believe Hollywood works very similar to like a caste system, meaning that you're born, and you're going, whether, depending on the type of that person you're born in terms of demographics and background, you're going to be relegated to a certain position. And there's nothing you can do to get out of that, because the system is there to keep you in place and keep you in that position. So basically, what do I mean by that? Well, we all know if you're a minority in this country, that it's very difficult to get cast. Or if you're a minority filmmaker, it's going to be very difficult for you to get deals. And if you get a deal, a film deal, you will not be afforded the same budget as maybe the white males are. So, for example, you may have a new kid on the block, a young white filmmaker, who will dazzle people by the movie he did with his iPhone, and his next film will be $100 million, where you, as, say, for example, a Latino filmmaker, will come along and do something really great, and your next project is only going to be $5 million. And this is what I mean by the caste system, is that they're very quickly going to put you into a box, and that's going to be a parameters from which you're going to operate from. And we can look at the statistics and see this very, very clearly. One of the things I want to point to is a good barometer of this is women in the film industry. We know that once women reach a certain age, if you're an actress, your roles diminish greatly, and this is very, very well known. And in fact, Time Magazine did some studies on this, and they found, which is very interesting, that women who are young, below the age of 30, get more roles than white men. Now, speaking specifically of white women, to give you this example first, but white women in Hollywood who are under the age of 30 get more roles than white men. However, that changes and tapers off when they reach the age of 30. I guess they're no longer considered a young ingenue. And then the men start to get more roles, and the women opportunities start to decline greatly. So what does that mean? Am I painting a dismal picture? No, what I'm saying is that as a woman, and if you're particularly if you're a white woman or European ancestry, you need to start thinking about kicking butt until you reach age 30, meaning that you need to make sure that you establish yourself and your name, your brand, who you are before you hit 30, because after that, you know that the roles won't be coming as many as when you were under the age of 30. So keep that in mind, you know. But I mean, I can go into a lot more examples, but this is just one example among many to clearly paint a picture to you that you've got to start thinking strategically about how you're going to get into the industry and build your empire. And not just get opportunities, but get longevity in the industry. I think it's very important, and a lot of us don't think about that. We only think about getting, you know, that one big break, and then we're going to figure out what to do from there. A good book that you should read, I think everybody should read, filmmakers and actors alike, is An Empire of Their Own. I've read this book many times. This is like my Bible, and this basically outlines how the Jews invented Hollywood, how they created Hollywood. And it goes over characters like Louis B. Mayer. You know, it talks about Harry Cohen, Jack and Harry Warner. These Adolf Zukor, these are the people who started the big studios that we know today as Paramount, 20th Century Fox, and so on, you know. And it really gives a detailed account of how they went from rags to riches and the stress and the whole thing that created this empire. And one of the interesting things that I found about the book is that it went over how the studio system used to work back in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, and all that. Meaning that you were put under contract with the studio and you did all your pictures with that studio. And it wasn't, you just didn't hop from studio to studio the way things are done now. And particularly, it goes over how the unions were formed, writers' unions were formed because the writers and other union personnel felt like the studios were abusing them, so they banded together to create these unions. So it's a really good read there. And as you know, I talk a lot about things such as, like, when you look at the country as a whole, Hollywood is basically kind of a mirror image of that, is that every demographic or ethnic group kind of dominated a certain field. And I covered this in a previous video I did, where I talked about how if you look at the immigrants who came to this country, what they did was they started to think about, like, what can I do to support myself and my family, or us as a group? And then when they got into that field, they locked it down so no one else can get in there and dominate it. And we saw that with the Irish and how they took over the police force, or the Irish are known for great shipbuilders. And when they got into the industry, they kind of locked it down so no one else could take control of it. We look at the Italians with construction. We can look at Jews with banking and media. We can look at Japanese with the automotive industry at one time. So these are things that I think that we need to start thinking about in terms of looking at the industry from a more strategic approach. Now, for filmmakers, I've always said this: if you look at the film industry as a whole, there was a perfect time to be an independent filmmaker, to get into the industry, where the studios would give you like a big budget and give you deals. And this was happening in the mid to late 90s. And this is when you saw like a lot of films take off, like Spike Lee, She's Gotta Have It, from Roger and Me. Kevin Smith got his film Clerks done that way, and his career took off, because at that point the studios were paying too much money to A-list actors like Schwarzenegger, and they were looking for other more inexpensive ways to get content, and they saw the independent filmmakers as a way to do that. So they rolled out the red carpet for the independent filmmakers. So if you were one at that period in time, you were given a real good doorway, or the door was open for you to go in there and make a success of your story, of yourself and your story. One book that really kind of covers this in a way is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. You should get this book, because it talks about how success, what we call as a person who's a genius, artistic, is not so much about the individual efforts, but it's about the time they were born, the place they were born, and the resources they had available to them. So when you see people like a Jay-Z or Puff Daddy, who these guys are around the same age, you have to look at the fact that when they got into hip hop and rap, it was at a certain time when the music industry was looking to co-opt that from the young entrepreneurs who were coming out of the South Bronx and things of that nature. But that now no longer exists in the same way that the filmmakers of the 90s who were getting deals, that whole paradigm no longer exists. So you have to start looking at, well, what is the new paradigm? What is the way that I can get into the industry that's going to be now based upon what's trending, what the industry wants? This is the way you've got to look at it to build your film empire. One of the things you keep in mind is that with the proliferation of content, or with digital media, there's so much content out there. You making a film is not enough. That your film now has to have fans and followers. It has to have a massive support for the industry to start to take a look at it and take it seriously. So building a tribe or a following is to be very important for yourself and your film. Actors making little comedy sketches and building, subs on YouTube of 500,000 is a great way to start, and to start looking at things and how you can get into the industry and have the industry take you serious, because there is no shortage of filmmakers. There's no shortage of actors. You have to understand and say, well, I'm no different. So what can I do to have my talent stand out? you know, and going to Hollywood and saying, I'm going to make a big splash or I'm going to get an agent, you know, that's a fool's journey. You've got to look at it with a more strategic approach and saying, what is my actual plan? And not just for getting that first big break, but for longevity, because I understand that there is a type of caste system, and that depending on my background, what I was born in terms of gender and race, I could be relegated to a very small position unless I'm an outlier or somebody who's a unicorn. And I could be like a Will Smith or a Michael Jackson or a Meryl Streep. But if you're not one of those individuals, you're going to be part of the masses who are going to be put on the peripheral. So think about that. You have to keep that in mind, because it's very important. We know, for example, that a lot of African Americans are relegated to roles that paint them as urban drug dealers and hip hop artists and sports figures. Rarely do you see them depicted in drama films or sci-fi films in a very positive light. We know that African American women are looked more on as sex objects than as really good thespians or actresses who can showcase their talent. And we know the industry has got it out for white women, because we know after 30, they're over and done with. So it's just, I'm just being a little funny here, but the truth is, you know, a hard pill to swallow is that, yes, you know, if you're a woman in Hollywood, in terms of being a film director or an actress with longevity beyond 30, it looks dismal. You know, you just think about that, keep that in mind, and start to plan accordingly, not to jump out the industry, but how are you going to become an outlier? How are you going to blaze a trail or make a way for yourself to stay in the industry, stay relevant, and not be part of that Time Magazine statistic, you know? So, okay, these are what I want you guys to focus on. The Outliers, this book is awesome. Malcolm Gladwell, An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood by Neil Gabler. Get this book. Its book has been out for many years, but it's just a source of information. Another book, and this is an older version that you should probably get, is Guerrilla Publicity, you know, getting yourself out there. How do you make a noise with little to no money? I think that's something that everyone should read and understand, so you can make a big splash. Put simply, it's no longer enough to shoot a webisode, to shoot a short film, to shoot a feature. And the saying used to go, if you build it, they will come, no longer applies here, because we're in an era now of where social media has so much just content that it's very difficult for a piece of work that is genuinely good to get to stand out and take notice, you know? And a lot of people that you are seeing now that have achieved some success in the industry, who are getting deals, a lot of them are cherry picked for specific reasons, whether it's to push a political agenda, whether it's to do favors, whether it's through nepotism. And that's another subject I want to close on, is human resources. We cannot discount the value of human resources. So what do I mean by that? I mean by the individuals that are in your social circle or in your family circle that can help advance your career. You know, if you have a lawyer in the family who happens to be an entertainment lawyer, you're in a good position. If you have a family member who is an agent or a banker, you're doing really, really well there. So those things can help you, and by all means take advantage of that, to parlay that into some type of opportunity in the business. You know, a lot of people that I know do have family members connected in the business in some way, shape, or form, and it has really helped them to prosper and to make some headway, as opposed to starting out from ground zero. So with that, you know, I'm going to bring this to a close, but I just want to make one little announcement that our new social media site for filmmakers and actors will be coming out next month. We spent a lot of time working on that and developing that. And it's going to be a platform to help filmmakers and actors find work in the business and to communicate with one another and hopefully forming network pools and opportunities for themselves and to grow their networks and connect them to important power brokers in the business, and to also find out the trends and what's going on, kind of what I'm speaking here about, you know. So I'm going to keep you up to date on that, and we'll be having a nice little press release and kickoff for that launch of the website next month. So be on the lookout for that. Now, if you like this video, you like the information I've given you, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so I can make some more great videos. And until next time, this is Ron K. Armstrong, filmmaker extraordinaire. That's all for now.